In this video, we will see how to edit a student data and delete then student data. So till now we have seen how to add using this web application what we built. We are adding the data in this application and then display student. We are displaying the data. So now we have to add update and delete button. So what we'll do here is in this display itself, we'll create two separate buttons here for adding, for updating and deleting. So I'll go back to my display.jsp and then I'll create two th. I'll just copy paste it twice. Oops. Okay. So here I'll say edit, or I'll remove the data. I'll just have some here, and then here in td I'll copy this paste twice. Now I need to add edit and delete button here. Edit and delete. So if I press on edit, that data I can edit, and delete I can delete. So I'll go and quickly get some good buttons. So I need buttons. Where do I have buttons here? Okay, so I have buttons here on the top in the bootstrap. So you can click on any. So I'll go back, I'll get this info button for edit. So I'll paste this in this td inside my for loop, and here instead of info I'll say edit. And then for delete I'll get this danger button which is red color, which says danger deleting. So I will paste this in this next td and I'll say delete. So now if I go back to my web application and I refresh the front page, so now you see I have edit and delete button for each record. So now we should write the program that if I click on this edit, it should only edit this record, and if I press on delete, it should only delete this record and come back to this display page. Okay, so this is what we have to build. So how do I send this to edit or delete? How do I do it? So we will be using this URL what you're seeing here. So you can see display student, then I'll say /1, that is nothing but roll number 1, that students what I have to display, or we will pass the ID of that student to delete. So for that I'll create a controller. I'll say new, I'll say servlet, and then I'll say edit student, and I'll press on finish. Okay, so here I will use the get method because I'll be getting the data from the URL. So I'll remove all the content in my get method and I will write the content here in get method, saying that in this edit student I will get a parameter and I have to read that. So I'll say int of id is equals to request dot get parameter, and I'll say get the parameter as id, and then I'll say system dot out dot println, I'll say id, and then I'll say response dot send redirect. You can redirect to display student. Display student, it will redirect. It is give me an error. Okay, because this is an int, I have to typecast it. So I'll say integer parse int. Okay, so now here I have written this. So you may be thinking why I wrote this. So we'll see here. So I'll call this student edit student in my display.jsp here in button. So I'll say href as go to edit student question mark take id along with you. What is the id? This should be that student id, right? This id it should get along, right? So I'll copy this scriptlet and paste it here. So this will be equivalent to localhost 8080 slash edit student, where id is equals to, and I'll get student id. So now I'll go back, I'll rerun this index.jsp, I'll press on finish. Okay, so now I have this, so I'll go to display student. Now if I press on edit, Okay, so this should be A. So I need this to be an A tag. Then only href will work. Okay, now I'll refresh and I'll say edit. So once I press on edit, see, it's going to edit student servlet where it is taking ID. Okay, ID, I should put ID equal to, I forgot to put equal to symbol. Let's go back and refresh this, my bad. I forgot to put equal symbol. So once I press ID, so see here, it will go to edit student where ID is equals to 1, and then you see here, I'm getting the data as 1, and then later, because I have written here send dot redirect to display page, it is coming back. So now if I here click edit for 2, see here I'm getting the 2, that is ID number 2. So now if I click here edit, so see here 6, right? So see here I'm getting 6. So what is happening internally is I'm going to this edit student and I'm giving a get request. So you see here I'm giving a get request saying where my ID will be given, and ID is equals to what, whatever is that particular loop's ID, what I'm getting, that object's ID, that student ID, I'll be getting this here. So I have to do exactly same for delete. So I'll go ahead and I'll create a delete servlet, delete student, where I'll be copying exactly same code what I have written here. But the only difference is here I'll be using this servlet to delete the data and not to edit. Okay, so here I have to use delete student. So I'll go back to my display JSP, and here for this delete I'll say href. So I'll say go to delete servlet and take along with you a get request where ID will be equal to, where is my ID? So you have it here. So for delete also this ID will go. So it will go to this servlet where here I'll have question mark and I'm reading that ID. You see here I'm reading the ID what I'm giving here. You see here I'm saying ID is equals to, right? So I'm reading that ID here and I'm displaying it, and I'm saying simply go back to your display student page. So now we have written the program where if I click on delete, so it is going to, okay, it is going to delete student where ID is equals to 1. It is not able to identify delete student. Is there something fault? It is not able to find delete student, that is what it is saying. But I do have a delete student here. So I think there is some small typo mistake what I have done, I think. Okay, I think I have to go back and have to run index file because I've created a new servlet. It won't work. So I need to restart the server. I need to restart the server. That's because I have done changes in class file. So it won't work just by going and refreshing. I have to restart the server. So once I restart, hopefully it starts working. So I'll go to display student, and here if I press on delete, so you see here I'm getting 1. So if I press delete for student with ID 6, see I'm getting 6. So now we have to write the program to delete and edit. So first we'll write the program for delete because it's easier. Then we'll go and do the edit part, which is a bit lengthier. So if I click on this delete, this complete row should be deleted, right? So once I get this ID, so I have to write the code in DAO, right, to delete it. So I'll create a method called as public static, then I'll say after deleting I'll say int, that is it will return number of rows deleted. Then I'll say delete student by ID. So by the ID given, int ID, delete the student. So here I'll say int of result is equals to 0. Then I'll say return result. And here we will have usually try catch block. So I'll say exception E, and I'll say E dot print stack trace. So now here, as I'll go and get the first 2 lines, which is common for all the JDBC codes connection. So I've copied this and I've pasted here. Now I have to write the So I need to delete. So I'll go ahead and create a prepared statement. Prepared statement pst is equals to con dot prepare statement, and what is the statement to be prepared? Delete from sms dot student. Is it student or student detail? I'll just go and copy this so that I don't do typo mistake in this. Delete from this where my id is equal to question mark. So that question mark, I'll say pst dot set int parameter index 1 and get it from a variable called as id, which is here what I'm getting. So once I do this, I'll say result is equals to pst dot execute update. After updating, it will return how many rows deleted and it will return. So now in my delete controller, I can call that. So I'll say int of result is equals to student do dot delete student by id, and I'll pass that id which it should delete. Okay, so once it is successfully deleted, only I have to go back, right? So I'll say if my result is greater than 0, then only perform this. Then only I'll say to perform this. Okay, else I'll say print writer out is equals to response dot get writer, and I'll say out dot print ln. I'll say student id not available. Okay, so now once I've finished this, hopefully this delete will work. So now we'll go back and we'll try this. So I have to restart the server because I've done changes in the do path, so I have to restart the server. Okay, so add student. Here I'll go back to my display students. Now I'll delete any one of this. So I'll go ahead and delete this sham record, that is id 3. If I press on delete, so see, after deleting, it is coming back to display student, and you see that record sham is not here, right? And if I go back to my database and if I refresh, so you see sham is being deleted. So how is this working? So if I press on one of this delete button, so what happens is it goes to my servlet. It is going to delete servlet. I'm doing a get request. So you can see here I'm doing a get request in which I'm passing the id. Here you see I'm passing that id. So I'm catching that id here. I'm reading that parameter and then I'm sending it to database to delete it. So once it is deleted, it will redirect to display page, and in display page it will display all the student, but the records are deleted. So same can be seen in your database. So this is how your delete works. Now with edit, what happens, we'll click on edit. So it will go to a page where you'll have all the data and you can edit the data whatever you want. So we'll be trying that now. So we are done with the delete part. Now display, in this we have even sent to event. So now I have to create a new sample page JSP file which will say edit student. So this means editing students data, edit student.jsp. I'll press on finished and I'll go back to add student. I'll copy the entire content of add student and I'll paste it here because it will be exactly the same. The only difference is the data here should be added by me. Okay, so now, and here on submit the button. Okay, so now coming to my edit student servlet. So in this edit student servlet, once I get the ID, so I have to get the data from database. I have to get the data from user ID from database. So for that I have to go to DAO, where I have to write this exact same thing again, but only for one user. So I'll just get one student. So I'll remove this list. Only one student I'm getting, and instead of get all, get student by ID I'll say. And here I'll remove this and it will just be a student model. So I'm not returning a new array, but only just one object, that model I'll be sending here. So I'll remove this and I'll give this student here name. So one model I've created, in that I'll add all the data, but the only thing is here the statement will be select star from sms.details, where ID I'll give here. So I'll give that ID, only that student detail I need, which I have to update, right? So here I'll write students detail where ID is equals to, and I'll just read plus ID. So select star from this and it will return this student. So now going back to my edit student, here I'll say student model s is equals to student DAO dot get student by ID, and I'll pass that ID. So what happens here is, once I pass that ID, only that particular ID data will be fetched from my database. So you may be thinking, why I can just pass all these values and I can stop, I can limit, I can rule out this, right? But there is one disadvantage, that is, if you are passing this data, what if this data is being changed from my, here I can go back to my inspect, you can see clearly I'm going to inspect in this, and here you see, here you can see robot name, right? I'm changing it to, so you see the name is being changed. Now if I press on submit button, this data possibly can go to your servlet. So I don't want this to be happen, right? So I don't want the data from client to be going back to my controller. So that's why, to verify it, re-verify, so better I'll get the data from database so that it cannot be altered. So even if you altered here as hacker, you can see here, but back end it won't be hacker, but it will be a robot itself. So that is why we'll be getting the data from database, and I have to import this model. So once I get this data, I have to send it using request dispatcher to my edit student so that I can display it there. So I'll say request dispatcher is equals to request dot get request dispatcher, and I'll say go to edit. I have to check this spell also. It is in small edit and then cap as edit student.jsp. So you have to go to this page where you have to take few data along with you. What is that data? Your single data of your user. Okay. So in this, I'll say request dot set attribute. I'll call this data, and what is the data here? S. That should go along. Then I'll say finally dispatcher dot forward request and response. So it will take that single user data from this to edit student. So in edit student, I have to write the program to get the data and display it in my form. And rather than going in edit student, where should my data go? It should go to my edit student. Rather than going to this add student, I have to give action as edit student, method as post. So it will go the data, it will go to edit student controller, and in this post it will go. So to insert that data, we will write the code here in do post. So coming back here, I need to get the data. So here I'll create a scriptlet and I'll say student model, and I'll say s is equals to request dot get attribute, and what is the attribute? Data is the attribute I have created. Yes, and I have to strictly tell this is of student model type. So I have to import this here. So I'll go back top, I'll create scriptlet with and where I'll say page, and I'll say import what all. So I'll say import java.util.star. In fact, I'm not using anything, but by mistake I've written that. And from model import everything. So you see here, all the errors gone. I have imported the data. So now that I have imported the data, I can display it. So initially I'll give here value is equals to in every row, and I'll say using scriptlet tag, I'll say s dot, here I'll say get roll number. So in this input tag, I will have value s dot get roll number. Yes, I need to also display ID. So I'll copy this and I'll paste it below, and here I'll say ID, and this I'll change it to ID. I'll change this to ID. Okay, and here also I'll change it to ID, and from get roll number it will become get ID. Okay, so I have done that. Now here I have to display value is equals to, I'll add the scriptlet and I'll say s dot get name, and here I'll say value is equals to, then in scriptlet tag I'll say s dot get email. After email I need phone number, so I'll say value is equals to, and here I'll say s dot, oops, I have to write scriptlet first, expression tag, then I'll say s dot get phone. So email, phone I have got. Now for this I'll say the value should be in scriptlet s dot, I'll say get branch. So I'll get the branch here, and here I'll say value by default should be from scriptlet, I'll say s dot get sem. After that finally I have grade, so I'll say value is equals to scriptlet and I'll say s dot get grade. So now this part value is equals to will give a default value, and what is that value? Whatever is that single user data what I got, right? So now we'll go back and we'll test this. So I'll click on index.jsp and I'll run this and we'll test if this is working or not. So let's see if this application is working or not. Okay, so here in add student I'll get add, in display here I'll get display student. Now if I want the first one to be edited, so if I click on edit, so it goes to that edit servlet, which in turns send me to edit, edit student.jsp, and you see here, and I'm getting that form where you see this data where I'm getting from. I'm getting all this data from backend and I'm displaying it. So you see here, you're writing value is equals to this, right? So it is displaying that previous value. So anything here you will be changing, whatever you change here will, after that I'll press on here submit, it will get updated to my database. So that program I have to write now. So now if I go back and if I press edit for Lily, then see here I will have ID for Lily, I'll have roll number, name, email, everything. I'll have all the details to update from Lily. If I say Ram, then see I'll have all the details of Ram which I can edit here, right? So now we have to write the DAO part where once I press on submit, it should go and update. So going back to my DAO, I'll create a method here. So I'll say public static, then I'll say int, that is number of rows updated, and I'll say update student data by ID. Okay, and then I'll say int of result is equals to 0, and then I'll say return result. Now I have to write the program to edit the data in database. So I'll give it in try catch block. Now again the first two lines will be the same as usual. So I'll go back, copy this, and I will paste it here. So once I've done this, I can create a prepared statement. And I have to also specify the parameter. So here I'll be getting the student model s. From there I have to update the data. So here the query is update, then I'll say sms dot student, that is my schema dot table name. So update this table, set, then I'll say roll number is equals to question mark comma name is equals to question mark comma, what all do I have in my database, first roll number, ROLL, you have to also check spell, so roll number, name. Then I have branch, so here I'll say branch is equals to question mark. Then I have sem and grade, so I'll have sem is equals to question mark, then I'll have grade is equals to question mark. Then I have email and phone, so here I'll say email is equals to question mark, and I'll say phone is equals to question mark, where my ID will be equal to question mark. So this is the entire query to update all the records. So now I have to start preparing the data. So I'll say pst dot set int. So first I have roll number, right? So set int, and then s dot get roll number. And I'll say pst dot set string. For second index I have name. So I'll say s dot get name. Then I'll say pst dot set string, and in third parameter index, what do I have here? I have branch, right? So I'll say s dot get branch. Okay, then I'll say pst dot set string, fourth parameter index. What do I have after branch? I have sem, so my bad, that will be integer, not string. So I'll say s dot get sem. Then I'll say pst dot set string, and I'll say fifth place after sem it will be grade email phone. So I'll say s dot get grade. After sem I have grade, then email and phone is my last. So I'll say pst dot set string, parameter index 6, where I'll say s dot get email, and then finally I'll say for phone 7th, so I'll say s dot get phone. Yes, then the final one will be my ID, right? So I got roll number 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 data, and my last one will be pst dot set int, where my eighth it will be ID. So s dot get ID, that's student ID. So here what are the data I need? 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 data in total I need, and yes, I do have 8 prepared statement here. So once this is completed, I can say result is equals to pst dot execute update, and it will return how many rows updated in that result. So this result, what it will return in my controller, I can write that logic. Okay, so now to edit from my edit student, if I press on this form submit button, that is for updating, so where should it go? You should carefully look. In my form it should go to even edit student controller, not add student, because we copied the content from add student. By default here you will have add student, but you have to change it to edit student, so that it will go to this edit student where I'll be getting the data. Now in edit student, as I'll go in add student, I just have to copy this entire data. So rather than rewriting, I'll just copy this entire data, because it will be exactly the same. So I'll go back to my edit student and I will paste it here. But there is one extra parameter also that we are getting, that is ID. So I have to write that also. So I'll copy and paste this, and my top one will be ID, and here I'll say ID. Okay, and then here also I have to add ID. So I'll say s dot set ID as ID. So once I've modeled this, then I can say int of result is equals to student DAO dot update student data by ID, and I will say s as the object that I'm passing. Then if my result is greater than 0, that means that row is updated. If my result is greater than 0, then I will simply send response dot send redirect, and I'll say go back to my display student servlet where you can display the student. Else I'll say print writer out is equals to response dot get writer, and then I'll say out dot print ln, and I'll say here error while updating, something like this. Fine. So here we have seen, using this get method first we are getting single data of user, and using this post I'm sending the data, I'm getting back the data, and then I'm sending it to database to get it updated, and after updating I'm going back to my display page calling the display student servlet. So now that this is completed, we can go and we can check. So I'll go and run my index.jsp file, and we'll check if all the four operations are working. That is, we are able to add, delete, edit, and retrieve it. So we have created wonderful applications for this entire project of student management system. Okay, so I have the project running. So I'll go to add student. I can add the data in display student. I'll check for edit. So I'll edit the first data, and here I will change the name from Aman. I'll write the complete name, that is Aman Ullah, and then I'll go down and I'll press on submit. So after editing, you see it is coming back, and now I have my entire name. So we'll check in database also if it is done. So I'll refresh. So you see in database also it is edited. So you see how we can go to add student. I can add a data. So I'll say 13, then I'll say student name as Nisha. So I'll say Nisha @gmail.com, and I'll give student phone number, then I'll give branch, I'll give SEM, I'll give SGPA, I'll press on submit. So you see adding, I'm getting Nisha data. Then if I press on edit, I'll be able to edit this to Nisha Gupta. Yeah, so I'll write Nisha Gupta and I'll press on submit. So you see Nisha Gupta gets edited, and then if I press on this delete, so you see that data gets deleted. And even from here, if I refresh, you see Nisha Gupta is deleted. So this is how we've created a wonderful application where we have first added a home page, then using add student we created a form where we can insert the data, and in display student we are displaying the data which we can also edit and also delete. Now in next video we will see the search option, where if I write a student name, only that data will be fetched.